Hey everyone, this is Adam Sweet with Soul Astrology, and today we have edition number 23 of the Anonymous Birth Charts. This is a series where I do bite-sized readings based on charts and questions submitted by you all. Let me go ahead and share the chart we're going to take a look at for today. And the question that came with this chart says, what is the best way to approach my current career stagnation and find renewed purpose? Let's start by looking at the 10th house. The 10th house is the house of career in the birth chart, and that's because it is the most visible house in the birth chart and thus represents things like career and public reputation, the things that are visible out there in the world that we do with our lives. That house is occupied by Capricorn, which is ruled by Saturn, who is in its own domicile here in this angular 10th house. So that is a very prominent and potent Saturn. That Saturn has a lot to say about career in this chart. Also, it is part of this stellium here with these outer planets, Neptune and Uranus, and Saturn has a big effect on those planets because it is so powerful, and those planets are in its own domicile, meaning Saturn is the host of those two planets. So Saturn provides, in my opinion here, a little bit of a maturing effect on these two planets. What would that look like? Well, one example may be that if we consider Neptune to be the dreamer, then Saturn provides the maturity. So you might be looking at somebody with a very realistic approach to their career. If we look at Uranus, which is the planet of freedom, revolution, and change, then Saturn provides the kind of limitations to those things or a more methodical step-by-step approach to change. That is all a secondary, or not secondary, but almost like further testimony, you could say, to the significations of Capricorn in general. And that's because Capricorn is that sign of the winter solstice where the sun begins to move towards the spring equinox and gain light day by day. So Capricorn is often associated with that symbolism of the sea goat methodically climbing up the mountain. And I believe this stellium here paints a very similar picture in a symbolic way. Now that's all really beautiful symbolism for this native's career, because what does it take to be successful in the world? Often a lot of patience and a lot of methodical daily actions towards our goals. Now that can be very challenging for a fiery sign like Aries ruled by Mars, who is that warrior planet of missions and inceptions. So maybe there's a little bit of frustration there for this native because they feel like they're stagnating, but it is actually just a tiring of that continuous daily grind. I would hasten to take a bet that that may be the case in this chart. Now, the really good news is that these two signs here, Capricorn and Aquarius, although in aversion, meaning they're right next to each other, so traditionally they don't share a line of sight, are ruled by the same sign. By the same planet. And this is a technique in ancient Hellenistic astrology called like ingirding. And that is where two signs ruled by the same planet, and in this case, they can't see each other, but they share an affinity. They are working together. So that means that these planets here are all working together for the greater good of the things that they signify. And in the case of this mini reading, the native's career. So when you put Mars and Saturn together, it is basically unstoppable. And that is why Mars is exalted in the sign of Capricorn, because you take somebody with a mission and you pair it with maturity and discipline, and you can create great things in the world. So I hope that this gives this native a little bit of hope, that although they feel like they're in a stagnant place, potentially They need to cultivate a little bit of patience, which I know can be hard for a fiery sign like Aries. But, and please don't take that as a ding on your character or anything like that. I'm just speaking archetypally here. But if you can cultivate a little bit of patience and continue to focus on that mission that you see at the top of the mountain, then you will be able to do really great things in the world. Now, on the flip side, if this native is just completely fed up with their job and is thinking about changing careers, there is a huge transit coming up that I think will have an effect on their career no matter what, but may provide the catalyst to make big change. And that, of course, is this big Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries coming up. Now, that's happening in this native's first house. So this is going to be personal. Remember, any ingress of a slower moving outer planet into a new sign and house was thought to be a big deal. So that moving into this native's first house is going to have a lot to say about their character, temperament, and personality. But because that is also squaring that Saturn-Uranus conjunction in their 10th house, it can have a lot to say about the tension between personality, who you are as an individual, and the career that you are seeking or moving forward with out there in the world. So that should give you a lot to think about there. Now remember, anytime we have an activation of these planets, this is a time for the karma around the house and the topics that it represents to change. Now that might require some personal change because it's happening from the first house, but that is also why in astrology the first and 10th house are in a square, because there's always a little bit of tension between who we are as a person and the career that we choose and the way we put ourselves out there in the world. It takes a lot of Mars-like energy. Remember, squares are of the nature of Mars. It takes a lot of courage, a signification of Mars, to be able to really go for it and enact our will upon the world. So I'm going to stop sharing there. I hope that we did some good work for this native today, and at the very least gave them some potent symbolism to consider and meditate on. If any of you out there are interested in a mini birth chart reading like the one you saw here today, please send me your birth data and a question to adam@soulastrology.com, and we'll go ahead and take a look at it. I appreciate you watching, everybody. Take care out there, and bye.